What do nerds, parrots, and bonsai trees have to do with expert businesses? In this video, I'll tell you. Hey everybody, welcome back. Dave Zimbicki here from the Expert Business Agency. We left off in the previous episode where I mentioned something called the profit pyramid. And what that outlines is the types of income levels that are available to you at the different types of paths you might take from both the corporate world and off into building your own expert business. Now, at the bottom of that pyramid is basically just being employed. Okay, it's obviously better than being unemployed, but if you're just employed, that means you have a job, it's paying you something, but generally your income level is going to be capped out, right? So, I mean, maybe you can make 50, 75, or if you're really lucky, maybe even up to $100,000 a year in some kind of a corporate job. But one of the biggest things that I talk to people I mentor about is the difference between a job and a skill, and the difference between a skill and a career. So just having a job is step one. I mean, obviously you got to get there before you can do anything else. Then developing a skill that is useful is the next step that you should do, right? That's what separates you just from anybody that could be interchanged into the position that you have. If you have a particular skill, that separates you from everybody else that doesn't have that skill. So that's kind of step two. That's the evolution that people go through, right? So somebody coming out of high school, yeah, sure, maybe they can get a job, right? Going to college, that in theory at least gets you to the point where you have some kind of a skill that's going to justify maybe some higher incomes, maybe get you actually onto a career path as opposed to just having a job. After that, though, is where it gets really interesting. So if you stay in the corporate path like I have for the last 20 years, you need to turn a skill into a career and then into a real expertise, right? And if you can do that, where you can develop that skill into something that you use at multiple companies, advancing along the way, building up your abilities and your experience in that area, then you start unlocking the higher levels of income. So if you're in a corporate career in a interesting or in-demand industry and you have a valuable skill or expertise, that's what lets you break through that $100,000 a year barrier, right? So like in technology, there's a lot of jobs that you can get, that are, 100K or more, right? Developer and, programmer and AI person and stuff like that. Even in design and in, business and accounting and legal and so forth, there are definitely paths to some of those higher income levels if you have a career in them and if you have some expertise there. But even if you're wildly successful, that path eventually tops out, okay? So other than maybe in extreme exceptions in particular industries or companies, you're not going to get to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of annual income inside of a corporate career unless you're way at the top of the executive level, or maybe you're, in the medical field or a doctor or something like that, or whether you're in really the top 1% in some of these other areas of expertise that we talked about. So while that's open to people, it's not a broadly accessible level of income in the corporate path. So that's one of the reasons why I talk a lot about and am focusing, both my personal career and my business career on what we called the expert business model in the previous episode, because that is what lets you go to higher levels of that income pyramid. When you start owning your own business and then scaling it, that is the path that is available to anyone to getting to those much higher income levels. So I want you to pause and think about that for a minute. I mean, the fact that today there is a path that can get us to 6, 7, or even 8 figures of revenue for businesses that we personally own, I mean, isn't that amazing? So what does that mean for you? Well, what it means is your wealth, impact, and legacy does not have to depend on your corporate employer or the state of the economy or any of these other factors that you can't really control. You can build a business of your own around your expertise, capable of growing to 6, 7, or even 8 figures of revenue. And everything we're going to talk about in here can apply down to the smallest or craziest of niches or topics that you can think of. Here's just a couple of examples. So I don't know if you've ever heard of a site called Nerd Fitness, but this originally started out with a bunch of geeks, starting a website and just talking about fitness or lack thereof. And it's expanded out into a huge community and made millions of dollars for the founders of that site and of that company, because they basically took their interests and their ability to connect with people, that were highly technical, nerds, geeks, whatever you want to call it, and then talk about fitness in a way that actually helped them transform their lives. I mean, it had a huge impact on a huge community, which therefore generated a huge amount of money for the people that built that site. Other examples is, you may have heard of the term life coaching. So you can find hundreds or thousands of examples of people that help others through particular life challenges, whether it's health, wealth, relationships, marriage, eating, alcoholism, any kind of problem or challenge that somebody might face, you can find a coach out there that helps people with those particular types of problems. If you are the person that has those skills and is able to help others, that has value to it. That's something that you can build a business around. Other expert businesses have been built around what I call weird sports. I mean, if you ever seen like curling in the Olympics, there's a couple of sites out there that provide coaching services for people that are trying to become better at curling and to move into the professional and Olympic levels and so forth. So even some of the weirdest, like narrow topics you can think of, it's possible to build a successful expert business around that if you can match, again, your skills with a market that needs them. There's even ones popping up now about teaching people how to play video games, right? So esports is exploding in popularity, and it's turning into a scenario where the people that are good at esports are getting deals and sponsorships for hundreds of thousands of dollars or even more because of their ability to play those particular online games and their ability to, have an influence over a wider community. So as a side thing to that, there's actually companies and people standing up services to help people get better at playing those games so that they can move into professional esports. So just another example of something that, you might never think of resulting in an expert business for somebody. And then when I was doing some research, I found a lot of really weird ones. I can't say that all of these get to 6, 7, or 8 figures, but I did find one where somebody is building a business around bonsai tree growing, right? So coaching, teaching people, providing supplies for how to grow those tiny little, trees that you find in Japan. So even bonsai tree growing is something that people have done. And then my personal favorite, and it connects back to the intro to this show, is another one that I found is somebody building a business around parrot training. And what I love is the opt-in that they have for that. It basically says how to stop your parrots biting in 20 minutes flat, right? Hit the yes button for a free video on how to solve those problems. And then behind the scenes, they actually have some courses and some training on that. So I bring up some of these crazy examples just to show not all of these have to be how to make $1 billion online, or not all of these successful businesses are, all this scammy, like crazy Bitcoin and house flipping and real estate, scammy type of stuff that you see online. There are thousands of real people building real businesses around their unique skills and expertise, and then finding those and focusing those skills and those products into a target market that needs them. That really is the core of the expert business model. And that is the path for moving up that profit pyramid, because in it, beyond just where you're going to be capped in the corporate career, by building an expert business on the side that also grows your income, that's the way that you finally start moving to those higher levels of the pyramid. Now, one thing I do talk about a lot that I think is really important at this point is I am absolutely not one of these people that says, go quit your corporate job, focus everything 100% on building some kind of online business, burn the ships, whatever, weird analogy that you want to think of for effectively saying risk it all. Why do people ask you to do that? Usually it's because they're the ones that have some kind of program or something that they're trying to sell you, and they want to try and get you to commit to that. Personally, I think that's some of the worst possible advice that people give in the online business space. I am absolutely encouraging you, stay with your corporate job. I am doing that myself, and I am leveraging the extra income and the money that job and that stable job provides as the fuel to start building my own expert business. As my expert business grows and eventually overtakes my income in the corporate world, that's when it becomes time to maybe switch and move into that full time. So we'll talk about that a lot more in future episodes. I just want to lay that marker here just to say that the whole point of what I teach is being able to do these things at the same time so that you have that stability and that income coming in that can fuel the growth and the building of your own expert business while you're still employed. So in the previous episode, I mentioned that I have done a lot of work and interviews and research with over a dozen different successful online entrepreneurs that have built their expert businesses up to 6, 7, or even 8 figures and beyond. And when you combine those stories with some of those even more narrow examples that I just showed you and putting it all together, what you need to start looking at is what do those stories all have in common? Well, what they have is an individual who has or develops some kind of skill or expertise that's in demand by a particular market, no matter how narrow, who builds a 6, 7, or even 8-figure business around that skill. And that's what I call an expert business. Now, to be clear, this is not passive income, right? Which is total BS to begin with. This does require work, okay? I'm not saying that this is easy, but what I am saying is this is achievable with the right combination of your own energy, the right coaching, the right mentoring, the right programs, the right tools, and so on and so forth, which we'll get into in later episodes. But it's absolutely possible, but it does require work. So it does have to be aligned with your particular goals. But imagine waking up every day energized because you can work where you want, when you want, how much or how little you want, and at the same time have the potential for greater wealth, impact, and legacy. That is what gets me out of the morning every day at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 to go start working on these things to help start building up my agency so that I can help other people build these types of businesses. If you don't find that super motivating, then maybe you might need a different podcast or video to listen to. But I think you're here because that type of thought does motivate you. And I'm going to be happy to help you find this path and help you on that journey. And then to be clear, this is not about get rich quick, right? It's not about extravagance. It's not about flash. It's not about Bitcoin. You're not going to see a picture of me in front of a Lamborghini or something like crazy like that. This is real world. I mean, this is about family. It's about fulfillment. It's about security. It's about fun, having more time, having freedom to do what you want. Take a vacation, take an extended vacation while your team is, running your business for you. We're going to get into some of those scenarios where there is a curve in the front where there's a lot of hard work getting this stuff off the ground. But then once it is up and running, then you can start to pick and choose how much you want to be involved, what parts of the business that you want to work on, and so forth. I mean, the bottom line is it's about doing what you want, when you want, from wherever you want. Sounds great. I mean, I think everybody would generically love that goal. But again, the exciting part is that there's a path here to get to that outcome. And then one of the things that I do talk about a lot too is, well, what's beyond that, right? I mean, if you're a skilled professional, if you're like me, or if you're in different industries and so forth, you probably have at least an okay lifestyle right now. You may not like it. You may not totally like your job, but probably if you're listening to this show, you have income, you have some stability, but you're looking for some alternative. Once some of those other things are there, once you have wealth, right? Once you have financial freedom, then other questions start coming into the mix. Like, well, what is my larger impact on beyond just my family, right? So everybody starts with self and family and making sure that's taken care of, and that's awesome. But then if you're lucky enough to move up some of these income levels, other questions start coming in, right? Well, what is my impact on the world? What's my legacy going to be when I'm older or when I'm gone, right? What are people in my family and friends going to remember that I did? And that's something for me is actually a hard set of questions. I mean, I've had a really successful career, made a ton of money and so forth. And like I said, all the benefits that come along with that. But if I look back and really think about, well, what did I really impact in the world? Those answers aren't always very satisfactory, right? I mean, I've worked in technology consulting for 20 years. So I've pulled off huge, ridiculous projects, help companies, improve results and save, money on the bottom line and so forth. But really, how many individual lives have I impacted? Very difficult question to answer. Did I leave any kind of lasting impact on the world at this point? Not quite, right? Maybe in individuals and, through people I mentored and so forth. But the answer isn't good enough for me, right? So I'm at a point where I'm thinking about broader goals than that. And that's one of the other really awesome benefits of this path of an expert business is you can choose what that impact is and what that legacy is going to be. So for me, and probably for a lot of us, the expert business path is probably the second act of our professional career, of what we're going to do with our working hours of the day. So again, that's what really gets me motivated is on my corporate path, there isn't really that path to the impact that I want. On this expert business path, there absolutely is. And so that's why I'm starting to shift a lot of my focus over to that. So over the course of the first 2 episodes of the Build Your Expert Business show, I've shown you the path. We've talked about the fact that everyone wants some form of wealth, impact, or legacy, or all of the above. But very few are on or even see the path to getting there. You have just heard that path. So pause and think about the path that you're currently on versus the path that I've just talked to you about over the last 2 episodes. Then ask yourself, how much would it be worth to have your own expert business? Build around your expertise, up and running in, let's say, 8 to 12 weeks, with the potential to grow to 6 figures, then 7 figures, and maybe even 8 figures someday, to get on that path to greater wealth, impact, or legacy. In other words, what would you pay or what would you do now to have $1 million per year business 2 to 3 years from now? I know I'd invest a lot, and I am. 20K, 50K, even 100K would be a bargain if you do that math and you look at that return on investment. So in the next episode, I'm going to show you how this is possible when you have the right mix of skills, desire, coaching, and support. Now, if you're like me and you're really motivated by all the concepts and the stuff that we've just talked about in these 2 episodes, and you want to dive in and go faster, then I'd like to invite you to head over to expertbusinessblueprint.com. And over there, I provide the exact blueprint that I'm using with clients in my agency to help them build and scale their own expert businesses in as little as 8 weeks. So in there, we cover all the different topics that are related from start to finish on this expert business model, on how to build your own expert business, and all of the different steps and details that need to be in there. So again, if you want to hit that fast forward button, head over to expertbusinessblueprint.com and then check out what I have for you. So if I delivered some value to you today on the show, I'd love it if you would hit the thumbs up button on this video and also leave me a comment. What did you learn in this episode about an expert business that you didn't know before? And then what would you like to learn about so I can do some future videos on that? And also be sure to hit the subscribe button so that when I do build those videos for you, you don't miss any of them. And then also, if you do subscribe, click that little notification bell bell. And what that does is that'll give you a notification anytime I post a new video, go live, or do anything other, activity going on here on YouTube. So thanks for that, and see you in the next episode.